Hello everyone, welcome to today's class. Today in 9th standard science we are going to learn chapter 7. Chapter name is energy flow in an ecosystem. So we are going to discuss science chapter 7 energy flow in an ecosystem. So we are in this chapter we are going to discuss about our ecosystem. So what is an ecosystem? So this picture is an example of an ecosystem. It is a water ecosystem, means aquatic ecosystem. So what all you can see in this image? You can see sunlight, insects, animals. You can see bacteria will be there. Plants, you can see plants, rocks, algae and protozoans will be in the water. Fungi, plankton, soil, minerals. So these all are the components of this ecosystem. So ecosystem refers to both living things, living things means biotic factors, non-living things, abiotic factors in a given area, the way they interact with each other. So living things include plant, animals, insects and bacteria, and non-living things will be soil, minerals, rocks. They all will be non-living things. So ecosystem refers to the interaction between living and non-living things in a given area. So the living things are called the biotic factors and the non-living things are called the abiotic factors of an ecosystem. So the biotic components, means living organisms in an ecosystem. It has two components, that are producers and consumers. So producers make their own food, like algae. The biotic component, producers will make food and consumers will consume the food made by the producers, or consumers will feed on the producers. So in type of consumers itself, there are three type of consumers in an ecosystem: primary, tertiary and secondary. Now we are going to see the trophic levels of an ecosystem. Means in an ecosystem, the biotic components, consumers means they feed on the producers, means they make producers as their food. So there are three type of consumers: primary, secondary and tertiary consumers. So we are going to see the trophic levels of the consumers. Trophic levels are the steps in a food chain where energy transfer takes place. So trophic level means they are the steps in an ecosystem where energy transfer takes place. So the first level in the consumers are primary consumers or herbivores. Herbivores means they eat plants. So grasshopper, squirrel, elephant, etc. they all eat plants and they are directly dependent on autotrophs. Autotrophs means producers. So we know two type components are there in the biotic factor of the ecosystem. They are producers and consumers. So producers means they produce food for themselves and consume, and consumers will depend on the producers of food. So the grasshopper, squirrel, elephant, they are all herbivores, means they eat only plants. So the grasshopper, squirrel and elephant directly depend upon the plants, so they come under the primary consumers or herbivores. Primary consumers means first level of the first trophic level, primary consumers, herbivores. And we are going to the next level, that is secondary consumers. Carnivores means they eat animals. Example: frog, owl, fox, etc. Lion, tiger, everything. So these consumers use herbivores as their food. So secondary consumers consume the primary consumers. Which are the primary consumers? Squirrel, grasshopper, deer, bear. So these secondary consumers consume the herbivores or primary consumers. Frog, owl, fox. Frog eat insect and grasshopper, and owl also eat insects. Rat and fox eat squirrels, deer, etc. So these consumers use herbivores as their food. So I am talking about the secondary consumers or carnivorous animals. So we are going to the next apex or top consumers. So the top consumers, they are also carnivores, means they also eat animal. Tiger, lion comes under the top consumers because tiger and lion are not consumed by any further animal, so they are top consumers. These consumers use herbivores and carnivores as their food. Means tiger and lion are they are top consumers or apex consumers, means they are the end of the food chain, means tiger and lion are not further eaten by any consumers. So and tiger and lion eat both the elephant and fox, deer, so they eat both herbivores and carnivores. So the top consumers, example tiger and lion, they eat both the herbivores like elephant and carnivores like fox. So they are the top consumers. And the last one is omnivorous, means mixed consumers, like human beings. They eat both herbivores and carnivores also. Human, bear, etc. feed on herbivores and carnivores produces. Like human will eat like rabbit, hen, they will eat the herbivorous animals, and they will also consume the consumers also. Like human eat meat also, and humans eat vegetarian also. So since humans eat the produces vegetables, and carnivorous animals and herbivorous animals like squirrel, rabbit, hen, so the humans come under the mixed consumer, since they eat all the mixed type of factors of the ecosystem. So these are the levels of the ecosystem: primary consumers, secondary consumers that are carnivorous, and top consumers and omnivorous. Omnivorous means mixed consumers, and secondary consumers means only carnivores, means they eat animals, and primary consumers means herbivores, means they eat plants, and top consumers means they eat herbivores and carnivores. Now we are going with the topic food chain. So what is a food chain? You can see in the example in the image. Like plants get energy from sunlight, and plants are consumed by a grasshopper. Grasshopper is consumed by a frog. Frog is consumed by a snake, and snake is consumed by an eagle, and when eagle dies, it is decomposed by microorganism or saprophytes. So this is a cyclic chain. Like from sunlight, plants get energy. The energy of plants are consumed by grasshopper. Grasshopper's energy consumed by frog. Frog's energy consumed by snake. Snake's energy consumed by an eagle, and eagle's energy consumed by microorganism or decomposes when it is dead. So this chain-like process, cycle-like process happening in between the organism in our ecosystem. The energy transfer take place between this stage to this stage. So that process is called, this chain link connection between the organism is called food chain. Flow of energy in the ecosystem, and the organism, all the organisms depend upon each other for food, like sun, grass, grasshopper, insects, frog, etc. So the interactions go on continuously between organism, between producers. Producers means plants. You can see plants. Consumers like grasshopper, and saprophytes. So consumers, grasshopper, frog, snake, and eagle all come under consumers, and saprophytes means microorganism which decomposes the dead animals like eagle, snake, or frog. Everything when dead, it is decomposed by, when dead animals are decomposed by microorganisms, so they are called the saprophytes. You can see saprophytes. And you can see this goes in a sequence, means after grasshopper first comes a plant, then grasshopper, then frog, then eagle. So there is a definite sequence, means the order cannot be changed. Like eagle cannot eat grass, or frog cannot eat grass, and an eagle is not consumed by a snake, or an eagle cannot consume a grasshopper. So there is an order in which the food chain happens. There is a definite sequence in this interaction which is called the food chain. So the definite sequence in which the interaction between organisms for food happens is called the food chain. Each chain consists of 4 or 5 or more links. So it have 4 or 5 more links. You can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 links are there, or more than 5 or 6 links are there. An ecosystem consists of many food chains that are interconnected at various levels. So in this image you are seeing only one example of only one ecosystem, an example of only one single food chain. So this is a single food chain we are seeing, but in our ecosystem there are many food chains and they are interconnected, means animals eat each other for their survival, and plants are consumed by both humans and animals also, and humans consume plants and animals also. So there is an interconnection of food chains. So the ecosystem consists of many interconnected food chains. Now we are going to discuss about the food web. So what is a food web? The food web means, in the previous section we have seen the food chain. So it is a direct link, means they are not interconnected. See, each animals eat the animals which are under their chain. So there is no any interconnection. It is a direct chain. But in a food web they are interconnected. You can see in this example, plants are consumed by grasshopper and butterfly, and grasshopper is consumed by rat and frog. So grasshopper is consumed by two animals, rat and frog, and you can see a frog is consumed by so many animals. Like a frog is consumed by a python, frog is consumed by an eagle. So there is an interconnection in between two chains, and a rat is also consumed by a python, a wolf, and also an eagle. So this many three animals eat the rat, and two animals like a python and eagle eat the frog, and frog consumes grasshopper and butterfly. Also fruit fly and dragonfly is also consumed by frog. You can see what all things frog can eat. Frog eat grasshopper, butterfly, fruit fly, dragonfly, and you can see butterfly is also consumed by frog and a dragonfly. And mangoes, you can see another another food chain here. Mango consumed by fruit fly is consumed by a thrush, like a bird. A dragonfly eat fruit flies, and the birds are consumed, small birds are consumed by eagle, and eagle also eat python. Snakes are also eaten by eagle. So there is an interconnection in between each of the food chain. You can see 4 food chains here. So this one is the first food chain, and this is the second, like a flowering plant, butterfly by frog, and likewise frog, dragonfly, likewise frog, eagle, and there is also. So 4 food chains you can see, and all these food chains are interconnected. So this interconnected food chain is called a food web. An organism may be prey for many other organisms. So like frog is prey for many organisms like eagle, snake, wolf, etc. Now we are going to discuss about the energy pyramid. You can see a pyramid shaped chart is shown in the figure. So each level in the food chain is called a trophic level. So you can see so many level image. You can see the first level, plants, primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary and quaternary consumers, or apex consumers. Top level means they are not further consumed by any other animals. So each level, you can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels are there. In each of this level is called a trophic level, and in each of this trophic level what happens? An organism obtains its food by consuming animals under their level. Like grasshopper consumes plant, rat consumes grasshopper, and snake consumes rat, and snake is consumed by eagle. The amount of matter and energy gradually decreases from producers at lowest level to the top consumers at the highest level. So energy of matter and energy decreases from producers. Producers means plants are the producers. When it goes like this, plants are eaten by grasshopper. So grasshopper get the maximum amount of energy. When grasshopper is consumed by another animal, it get less energy than when compared to how much grasshopper gets by consuming plants. And when this rat is consumed by snake, it gets further, so snake get much lesser energy than grasshopper and rat. And when it comes to eagle, it gets much lesser, very small amount of matter and energy when it consumes a snake. So the primary consumers like grasshopper, flies, butterflies, caterpillars and insects get the maximum amount of energy because they directly consume the producers. Producers means which make food by their own, like plants. So the energy decreases when it goes to the apex level or top level. So in a food chain, organisms obtain energy by consuming the organism one at the level below. So the level below, animals are consumed by the each levels of organism in a food chain, and plants are the producers in a food chain, and all the animals are consumers because they fed on plants. So the energy pyramid is a pattern of energy exchange in an ecosystem. You know how the energy is passed on from the producers to consumers. So this pattern of energy exchange is called an energy pyramid. So there are different levels of energy exchange in a food chain. You have seen in the levels of the tropic levels of energy exchange, and the initial quantity of energy goes on decreasing at every level of energy exchange. So at each level, the energy consumed by the consumers gets decreased. Similarly, the number of organisms also decreases from the lowest to the highest level. The number of organisms also decreases. Like you can see, there are wide variety of plants, and there are lesser number of primary consumers, and lesser number in the secondary, and you can likewise the number of animals in each level is decreasing when it comes to the top level. And this pattern of energy exchange in an ecosystem is called the pyramid of energy. So the exchange of energy in an ecosystem is called the pyramid of energy. We are going to discuss about the decomposers. Decomposers means those organisms which decompose or make food on the dead remains of plants and animals. So fungi and other microorganisms, fungi means funguses, microorganisms like bacteria decompose the bodies of dead animals. So since they decompose the dead animals, they are called the decomposers. In this process of obtaining food from the remains of organisms, remains means dead remains of the organism, decomposers convert them into simple carbon compounds. So all the microorganisms like earthworm is also a decomposer. It is not a microorganism, but it is a decomposer. And mushrooms, insects, fungus, bacteria, they all convert the complex compounds into simple carbon compounds. So what is happening in decomposition process? Decomposers convert them into simple carbon compounds. What they convert? The dead remains of organisms. These substances easily mix with water, air and soil. So the simple carbon compounds easily mix with water, air and soil, from where they are again absorbed by plants and incorporated into the food chain. So what happens in the food chain? The decomposers feed on the bodies of dead animals, and they decompose and convert it into simple carbon compounds, and these carbon compounds mix with the air, water and soil, and they are easily absorbed by plants, and the plants get absorb that simple carbon compounds, and again the plants are consumed by the consumers, and again it is traveling through the food chain. So this is the role of the decomposers in a food chain, and these are the examples of decomposers. The sun is the most important source of energy in an ecosystem. You know, the ecosystem food chain starts from the sun, so it is the most important source of energy in an ecosystem. And green plants of the ecosystem store some of the solar energy in the form of food. So the plants absorb solar energy from the sun and store it in the form of food. And also, before reaching the decomposers, the energy is passed from one tropic level to the next, and decomposers, despite some amount of energy in the form of heat, means they give out some amount of energy in the form of heat, they give out energy, and however no part of the energy ever returns to the sun. So from sun we receive the energy. Plants receive the energy from sun in solar energy, and it store them in the form of food, and the decomposers give out some amount of energy in the form of heat, and no part of the energy is returning back to the sun, and such passage of energy is one way, since no energy is returning to the sun. You can see in this food chain the energy is passed from sun to the plants, and from plants it rotates between different levels of consumers, and at the end it reaches at the decomposers, and the decomposers give some energy in the form of heat, but nothing is returning back to the sun. So it is a one-way transfer, like this. It is one way, it is not rotating back to the sun. Now we are going to discuss about a biogeochemical cycle. Means we are going to discuss about the different cycles, chemical cycles, biological cycles that is happening in our ecosystem. We are going to discuss about that cycles, chemical, biological cycles that happening in our environment. So what is a biogeochemical cycle? The cyclical flow of nutrients within an ecosystem. So that cyclical means in an order, like cycle means it is rotating, repeating, so in a pattern. So that flow of nutrients. So the cyclical flow of nutrients within an ecosystem is called biogeochemical cycle. Nutrients necessary for the growth of organism are continuously transferred factors within an ecosystem. So nutrients which are necessary for the growth of organism are continuously transferred within an ecosystem. Between factors means abiotic factors and biotic means living organism and non-living organisms. Non-living things. This cycle operates continuously through the medium of biosphere. Biosphere means the earth in which we live. So the cycle, these different cycles like carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, water cycle. So these different cyclical processes, biological chemical cycles are operating continuously in our ecosystem. They are formed by the lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere. Medium means it is happening between all the layers of the earth, like biosphere, lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere. The recycling of biological, geological and chemical resources of nutrients in this process is a complex process. Recycling means how energy is transferred from the biological means living organism, through living organism, and geological means non-living things, abiotic factors like minerals, soil, rocks, and chemical sources like compounds through the air, like gaseous forms, chemical compounds like carbon, nitrogen. So all the biological, geological and chemical sources of nutrients in the process, the recycling, how the recycling of these nutrients happen. So that is called the biogeochemical cycle, and it is a complex process and it depends upon the level of energy transfer in the ecosystem. So this biogeochemical cycles depends upon the energy transfer in an ecosystem. So this is an image of biogeochemical cycle. So the hydrosphere atmosphere interaction. Hydrosphere means the Earth's layer, you know, the different layers of Earth. So the hydrosphere atmosphere interaction, you can see atmosphere environment interaction, atmosphere and environment, and interaction of hydrosphere atmosphere and lithosphere with the biosphere, you can see, and conversion of lithosphere into rock soil, you can see all this. So we are going to the first cycle we have to study in this chapter, that is carbon cycle. So carbon cycle means how the carbon is rotating in our biological, geological and chemical medium, how in the ecosystem, how the carbon is recycling. The circulation and recycling of carbon from the atmosphere. So the circulation means how carbon is circulating, and recycling of carbon in the atmosphere to living organism, and after their death back to the atmosphere is called the carbon cycle. So what is carbon cycle? Carbon cycle is a circulation, recycling of the compound carbon from atmosphere to living organism. So atmosphere to living organism, and from living organism after death back to the atmosphere, the carbon is rotating, circulating means moving, transferring to one form to another. So that process is called a carbon cycle. The plants convert carbon dioxide means CO2 into carbohydrates. You know that plants take CO2 and give out oxygen. So plants take carbon dioxide and convert them into carbohydrate. The process is known as photosynthesis. So plants consume the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and they make carbohydrates, consume them as carbohydrates and give out only oxygen. The herbivores feed upon the plants. Herbivores, you know, like insects, grasshoppers. So the plant eating animals, they eat the plants, and the carnivores fed upon the herbivores. Carnivores means animals that eat other animals. So the carnivores eat the herbivores, like frog eat the grasshopper, or the snake eat the frog. So the carnivores feed upon the herbivores in this way. So the from plants the carbon dioxide converted into carbohydrates. So the and the herbivores means, like you can see cow, grasshopper, they all eat only plants. So from plants the carbohydrate is passed on to the herbivores like cow, and from cow it is cow or grasshopper, when they are consumed by other animals like lion, frog, they carnivorous animals, they are passed from herbivores to those animals, to like lion or snake or grasshopper, frog. So this carbohydrate means carbon travel from plants to herbivores to carnivores. In this way biotic carbon is transferred from plants to herbivores to carnivores, and in cyclic the carbon is circulating. After the death, all types of consumers are decomposed by decomposers. So after the death of the herbivores, carnivores, secondary, you know that there are different levels of carnivorous animals or consumers. So after the death they are decomposed by decomposers like bacteria and fungi. Carbon dioxide is released again to the atmosphere. So in the decomposition process at the end, when these animals are dead, the carbon is again released, carbon dioxide is released to the atmosphere and used again by the living organism. So in this way the carbon is rotating, circulating in the ecosystem. Next we are going to discuss about the oxygen cycle. So what is oxygen cycle? Circulation, recycling of oxygen within the biosphere is called the oxygen cycle. So circulation and recycling of oxygen is called the oxygen cycle, and it includes both biotic and abiotic components. So both the living things and the non-living things are components of an oxygen cycle. Oxygen is continuously produced as well as used up in the atmosphere. So oxygen is produced continuously and used also continuously in the atmosphere. Oxygen forms 21% of the atmosphere. You know, all the animals take oxygen. to breathe, and oxygen is released in the process of photosynthesis, whereas it is used in the process like respiration. So when we breathe, respiration, animals breathe, respiration takes place, and so we take oxygen and we give up carbon dioxide. But in case of plants, what happens? They take carbon dioxide and they release, through photosynthesis plants release oxygen. So what are the other processes which releases oxygen? Respiration, decomposition, rusting. Decomposition, you know, microorganisms fed upon the dead animal, so that process is decomposition. Rusting, you know, metals will rust. Combustion and corrosion. Iron corrosion, you know, have no, and combustion means burning process. When fire releases oxygen, O2. And all the decomposition, rusting and corrosion. Corrosion means, you know, iron corrosion you have seen, and rusting of elements. So all these processes release oxygen. So which are the processes which release oxygen? Respiration, decomposition, rusting, corrosion and combustion. Most organisms use oxygen for respiration. You know, all the animals respire taking oxygen, and such microbes are called aerobes. So the microorganisms, we are discussing about the microorganisms which take oxygen, breathe oxygen, are called aerobes, and which do not need oxygen are called anaerobes. So two types of microorganisms which use oxygen for respiration is called aerobes, and which do not need oxygen are called anaerobes. Next we are so this is the picture of the oxygen cycle. Like you can see animals produce oxygen, they take carbon dioxide and they give up oxygen, and animals breathe this oxygen, and breakdown of molecules by animals, and animals gives out CO2. So what happens when respiration takes place inside an animal? They break down of sugar molecules by animals, and they respire or they breathe out CO2, carbon dioxide, and this carbon dioxide is again absorbed by plants. Plants absorb CO2 and produce food material, and again it is released to, oxygen is released to the atmosphere. So it is a cyclic process. Next we are going with the nitrogen cycle. So what is the nitrogen cycle? So nitrogen forms 78%. So maximum portion of the atmosphere, which gas is there? Nitrogen. 78% of the atmosphere is nitrogen, and 21% is oxygen. It is necessary for the maintenance of cycle of nature. So this high amount of nitrogen is necessary for maintenance of the cyclic process, biogeochemical processes. You have seen that what is biogeochemical. So for all that chemical cycles, biological cycles happening in our ecosystem, nitrogen is necessary. The circulation and recycling of nitrogen gas into the form of different compounds through various biotic and abiotic processes in nature is called a nitrogen cycle. So the circulation and recycling of nitrogen gas into form of different compounds. So nitrogen is breakdown into different compounds like nitrites, nitrogen molecule, through various biotic and abiotic processes. Means living organisms also take part, and non-living things also take part in the nitrogen cycle. So that process is called a nitrogen cycle. All organisms participate in the nitrogen cycle, and most organisms cannot use free form of nitrogen. Means the nitrogen that is present in the atmosphere, free form of nitrogen N2, that cannot be consumed by animals directly, and organisms directly. So you can see there are various steps involved in the nitrogen cycle. Like you can see nitrogen fixation processes. Nitrogen is breakdown into simple compounds, different compounds like NH3, NO2, NO3 and NH4. So different form, and a free form of nitrogen is N2. So NO2, NO3, NH3, NH4. So different compounds. How these compounds, breakdown of nitrogen happens? So you can see the different processes of nitrogen cycle. So first process is nitrogen fixation. What is nitrogen fixation? It is a conversion of nitrogen into nitrites and nitrates through atmospheric, industrial and biological processes. So the conversion of nitrogen into nitrates and nitrates through atmospheric, industrial and industrial means when the factories also release nitrogen, and in atmosphere there is also nitrogen, and biological processes when living organism also give nitrogen. So this conversion of nitrogen into nitrates, you can NO3 and NO2. So this breakdown of nitrogen, that process, conversion of nitrogen into nitrates and nitrites through various processes is called a nitrogen fixation. And second one is ammonification. It is the release of ammonia through decomposition of dead bodies and excretory waste of organisms. So the decomposition of dead bodies and excretory waste of organism led to the release of ammonia, NH4. You can see that NH4 is released from excretory waste of animals and also from the dead remains of animals. So this also led to the release of nitrogen into the atmosphere. So that process is called ammonification, release of ammonia NH4 contain nitrogen. The third process is nitrification, the conversion of ammonia into nitrate and then nitrate and nitrate is called nitrification. So conversion of ammonia is into nitrite and nitrate are called nitrification. And the fourth process is denitrification, that is conversion of nitrogen compound into gaseous nitrogen. So you can see in the image, the ammonia is released by animals, excretory waste, and then this nitrogen is converted into nitrates and nitrates. So this process is called nitrification, and when this nitrate is converted into released into the oxygen, that process is called denitrification. So these are the important processes in the nitrogen cycle.